Hello everyone, I am so excited to finally get this video done for you guys. You can see this is my PDF tutorial. It needs to be updated with a link to this video that I'm making right now. The PDF tutorial isn't published yet, so it's okay. I will update it. I'll update it before I publish it. So first we're going to say this is the beautiful square we're going to make. And it is pretty. But what's special about it, besides being interlocking crochet, which I know is kind of new to some people, it's also been done from the center out. And I tried to find a yarn that would show off like the rounds and the rounds, but all of my yarns change color too long. So this is also from the center out. You can see that the colors change, they gradiate this way as opposed to your row by row when you would have it that direction. However, this pattern is too big to show in my tutorial video, so I made a smaller pattern. And this one is very titled appropriately / boring. It is called Center Out Tutorial. I know, right? That's what I got. That's what I got. So I'm very excited though. This is what it looks also on the wrong side. You can see my picture. This tutorial is a few pages long. This is what you get. So one of the things that is in here at the very back is a copyright page reminding you that you cannot reproduce this or distribute it. Even though this is free for you, it's still under copyright, just FYI. So that's boring. We don't need that today though. The other thing that is in here, besides, this is what the actual pattern is. Look, pattern with the introduction, the key, then the pattern. That's it. This is all tutorial papers. Then when you get to the back though, you do also need the key for the chart. This is the full page chart. And then this is the chart that breaks it down. So I know it's very confusing right now, but we're going to go through it. So these are the pages that are tutorials that if you're watching this, I don't need to go over those pages because they're the same thing. That's what I'm doing here. So we're just going to pack this all stacked up together again. And we're going to start with, first things first, this chart is 21 by 21. I guess I do need that big one pack, sorry. Okay, so there's the chart. This one, you start always at this corner. The numbers on the top, you have to guess at the numbers in between because when you have like a huge chart, you actually can't fit all the numbers in between. So that's why it prints out like that. And same with this, it only prints 2, 4, 6, 8. It assumes that you know how to count and you can fill in the gaps. So 21 is actually at the top and it's a square. So this is also 21. And this is fine if you have a chart like this. So from my other tutorials, sorry, not my other tutorials, my other patterns, you could still do a center out from any of the patterns, even if they don't all have the same sides. So this one is the same no matter which direction you turn it. So we're going to go over how to read it from the center out and go round and round. This chart, because I have adjusted it and the written instructions are included for center out, this is how I break it down. So you could draw on here if you'd like, and you could say, well, these ones here, all the way up, those are all corner stitches, right? That's how you get a square. So that's this part here. But when we start, we're actually, every row is going to start in the middle. And we go to the corner and around and around and around, and then half of the row again to finish it. So it's like this, only this section here in the middle gets repeated for all the other sides. So you have to know that. It is written on this chart page. So you could just read this. If you didn't want to listen to my video, you could just read this and it should give you all the information that you need. Here it is. These are the instructions for how to use the chart and then the key. The first thing I noticed on the key is this big blue because everything else is white and this one's blue. That's because the corner squares are always blue, so they are blue on the key as well. The other, F, for example, and B, you have some Fs on green and some on pink, which means it doesn't matter what color they are, F and B still mean the same thing. If you see an F, you're working in front of the other color, regardless of what color you see. So that's why the colors aren't here. And this, again, this side is all red, this side is all blue. This one happens to all have the arrow up. They are all telling you to put that yarn the other side. These ones, you can see this one actually has it the other direction, but it's still telling you where you put your accent color. So that is why they're split apart. We will go over that a little bit more. I want to first of all explain that if you have not done interlocking crochet before, the regular back and forth, I do suggest that you start there. Get more practice with that before you go up to the next level and do from the center out. Now, you'll also notice that on my charts or on my patterns, I use generally a 4.5 millimeter hook with worsted weight yarn. So these, I actually don't know the brands because they're from my stash, but I think one is Red Heart's Super Saver something. The black feels slightly softer, so I think it's something else. But they're worsted weight, like 4- medium worsted weight. That's what the Yarn Council says. And the wrapper would probably suggest a 5 millimeter hook. And I like to go down to 4 millimeter because of the way my tension is. And I like to keep my stitches relatively tight. If you don't like that, change your hook size. It doesn't bother me. But it will change the finished size of your project. So this one, I didn't lock in the edges, but I also used a slightly bigger hook. And you can't really tell because it's such a small square. So on a small square, this is the only difference you're getting. On a bigger blanket, that difference would be multiplied, which is why you can pick what you like. I also don't really like how big these gaps are. Like this one, for example, it just feels better over here. The drape of the fabric is better on this. It's looser, it wiggles more. This one still feels like fabric to me, so that's why I prefer it. But that is what you need to know. So we are going to jump right in, turn the page. We'll say, okay, I got my hook, I got scissors. Those are only needed at the end. I also have my fancy little needle. That's also only needed at the end. So I'm just going to put it aside for now. And we're going to get to the key. It's important to read a key. When you're new to a designer, they have a different way of describing their stitches. When you're new to a pattern, maybe this pattern is slightly different than the last pattern. The key will tell you. Here's what I have separated the key into 3 different sections. The first section is dealing with your colors. So I've got 2 colors. For interlocking crochet, you need 2 yarn. They need to contrast well. If your yarn is multicolored, then every color in this yarn has to contrast well with this one. On the charts, the gray corresponds to my black yarn, which is the main color according to the written instructions. Now it also says green on chart. Well, this is black, right? It's actually referring to this chart here. When you get more familiar with the techniques, you'll see that these charts are really telling you the same thing. It's just that one has these letters on them and this one has the whole square. This is what my old patterns have. This, any pattern that I'm updating to have center out instructions, will have a chart like this. But you could still reference this chart if it helps you, okay? So this is actually the chart that goes with the center out. The main color is green on the chart, black yarn. The accent color is pink on the chart. I'm using this, I don't even know what it is. It's beautiful rainbow, I like it. I was hoping for longer color changes, but we've got that. The back and front refers to the wrong side. B comes before F, so I put it alphabetically. And front is the right side. With regular interlocking crochet, you flip your work. You go this way and then you go that way. With the center out, you're always going this direction and you always see the front of the work. A little cat hair on there, sorry. I've also put this instruction in the key up here, accent color or main color, to back or to front. It's just up here because it didn't feel like it went necessarily in the other 2 sections. We'll get there, I'll explain it all more, a little better. This part here, crochet stitches used, These are stitches that would be in any number of crochet patterns. BLO, back loop only, chain, double crochet. I'm using US terminology. Half double crochet, magic ring, which I just created a page on my website all by itself. It has the photo tutorial and a video tutorial. The video tutorial is so short, it's really not hard. I'll go over it here too though. Skipping a stitch, slipping a stitch, and then this is special terms that are just to do interlocking crochet from me. Other designers might use the same, I don't know, it doesn't matter to me if they use an F. But this is what my patterns use. A C means corner, the B is when you're doing it behind, F is when you're doing it in front. It does include the double crochet and the chain one. So if you've done interlocking crochet before, you know that every double crochet then has also a chain space between each. So that is the special terms. When you get here, this is the actual pattern. It's literally this big to make this square. And you see that it starts with this chain 3 in front here, chain 3 in front. That's referring here. That counts as your first stitch. So if you were to count your stitches, and you look here, oh, this row here, it has one here, 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 one here. They all look the same. You can't even tell which one of these was a chain 3 and which of the other ones were double crochets, right? The chain 3 counts as the double crochet and chain space. Just like your F or the B, this one would be front, double crochet, chain space. So they equal the same thing. Now, we're going to keep going to the actual pattern. I'm going to set this one aside because I would like to show you how to actually start the pattern. Setting up foundation rows. I have some pictures here to help you, but I'm going to do it because that's the point of the video. This is where you're going to refer to your charts as well to decide which is the main color and which is the accent color. Main color is that center dot. Usually, I can't guarantee it because I haven't actually designed all the rest of my patterns. But as far as I can tell right now, this dot is always going to be black because the outside line is black. And every other stitch gets counted on these charts, which means the center and the outside have to be the same. So as far as I can tell, black on the chart, or dark green, is your main color. Pay attention to the pattern that you have though if you're doing later information overload. Okay. So using my black, my main color, that's what I'm going to create as my foundation setup. This is my accent color. I'm going to create this circle. I actually start here as row 0. So I'm using my accent color and I'm going to do a circle. First, we're just gonna chain 8. I can move this out of the way so you can see my hands better. And this counts as row 0, which when you're looking at this chart, sorry, I interrupt myself. The numbers are starting at the bottom and you go back and forth up because that is how a normal interlocking crochet pattern is written and read. The charts are read from here to here. That's why I have split them when I adjust them and give you the written instructions for the interlocking crochet. It comes with a chart like this because now you can see that row 1, which they don't put a number there. I don't know why. I didn't design the program, but the program helps me so much that I really am not going to complain too much. I assume that you guys can start at the bottom. That is row 1. We can write it on there if you're having a hard time. This is row 1. This is row 2, right? And then it's 3 all the way up. So row 1 does not start at the bottom. Row 0, if you were to keep going down here, row 0 is here and it's green. That's your dot. So that's going to be our inner dot. This inner dot right there corresponds to here. You don't need it on the chart because I'm telling you that when you read my charts, you start with the main color and you do this setup, okay? So to do our foundation rows, the setup instructions tell you to grab your accent color first and create a circle. it's going to be chain 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Slip stitch into that first chain so that you are creating a loop. I go into 2 stitches, but it doesn't really matter. There's only 3, right? Oops. But it does matter if you split your own. Don't do that. And slip stitch it together. I do not like creating these. They're fiddly, but that is how we do it. Slip stitch together. Ta-da! Now you have a circle. It is easier to also do chain 3 right now. And you'll see that this chain 3 is actually the beginning here. Chain 3. I like to chain 3 at the end because I do slip stitch chain 3. It doesn't say chain 3. The chain 3 would be for the next row, but I like to do it because it's easier to keep track of the tail. So that is how the instructions tell you to do it. Chain 3 to prepare for the next row. Place your stitch marker to hold the live loop. We're not going to be crazy with our circle. We'll just set it aside. If I had children around that possibly would grab it, I would stick a stitch marker in. Now the main color foundation row, which is going to count as nothing, that inner dot is counting as nothing as the inner dot. And it's also counting as row 1, which you can make a mark if you are trying to pay attention here, that row 1 is going to be using your black yarn, right? That's this one. It's using black. If you had another color, you could say, well, row 2, and you could color it in as pink or something, right? But that's how, if you need to mark it up, that's where I would mark it. If you don't need to mark it up because you can follow the rest of it later, then don't mark it. Up to you. Now, to create our foundation row with the main color, first we're starting with a magic ring. I have a quick tutorial on my website, but I'll do it again here. Yarn over my fingers, going back and up, cross it over here, grab it here, under, pull the loop up, and that's it. Now it's very loosey-goosey, right? So some people prefer to also, when they grab the loop up, some of them are also able to grab their first chain here. I'm not very good at that part. I usually have to let go and use my fingers to hold it, but that is how you do it. We are going to use this magic loop. It can get really tight. You don't want to tighten it yet. We're going to make this square. It's got a cross on the front and a square on the outside. So we're going to chain 7. We did 1 chain to hold everything in place. So we need 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's a total of 7 chain. Then it says double crochet in the magic ring. So yarn over, going into here, it's got 2 tails on this side and only 1 string on this side. So you're going to go over the one that has 2. That's how you know you're doing it right. And we double crochet in the magic ring. Now it says chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it has an asterisk. If you're reading the pattern, it says asterisk, double crochet, then chain 4, and then the other asterisk. So between the asterisks is where you're repeating it 3 times. So that means that we did it once. This is going to be twice. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 3rd time. One, 2, 3, 4. Then we can slip stitch it, which means we're done with this big giant loop. We can slip stitch it to the 3rd chain from the beginning. So at the bottom we have 1, 2, here's my 3rd chain. Slip stitch, and that is your foundation square. I still like to do that chain 3 just so that it's easier to manage. Now you have a really long tail here. You will need to secure it at some point. I don't usually do it yet, just in case I have to take things apart. This will come apart. You need to make sure you're weaving it in very strongly, making knots, whatever you like to do. I just weave it through the fibers a few times, but it needs to be secured. It'll keep loosening. That's the whole point of it. It's adjustable, right? So that is our 2 foundations. Yay! Now what? Now here is where I'm going to get my photo tutorial. This is what a pattern would tell you, but there's lots of options. For this particular pattern, this is what it's showing. It says that you have your square, you take your center loop, or sorry, circle, you put it through this top corner. So now your circle is behind the cross, but your working tail is in front of the square. There is other options. I assume that I will design things that use all the options. I guess I don't know for sure. So these are the 4 options that I come up with. First, pay attention to this tail. Should this tail be on the front or behind this outer square? That's the first thing that you need to know, because that means you're either going to place it in front or place it behind. Then you can worry about the circle. So if it's behind and the circle is behind, then you're good, it's fine. But if this is behind and the circle needs to come out front, you just pop it through here. Now you're good. If this working tail needs to be in front, but the circle needs to be behind, you just pop it through. When you're popping it through, regardless of if it's front or back, put this working tail to the front and look at your squares. This is the hole that you want to go through. Why? Because when we are, every single round, when we get to the end and the beginning, our accent color is always going to be, oh, that's the working, let's get that out of the way. The accent color is always going to be just to the right of the main color. They're always going to be beside each other. So those are the options. For this pattern, this is how we want it. The circle is going to hide behind the cross, and that working loop is going to be up at the top. If all you have is a chart to look at and you don't have the written instructions, you can look here. So this is our inner dot. Then do you see the black, the main color here? If it's not a main color, then you'll have to bring your circle to the front. If this is main color, so right here is F, that means that your black, your main color, needs to be on the front. It needs to be in front of that circle. How do you determine where this tail is? Row 1, the foundation stuff, foundations together, is row 1. So it tells you the black has to be in the front, and then this red row, column, sorry, I always confuse those. Red column is telling you what to do with the accent color tail. And it is saying that that accent color tail needs to be brought towards you. I put it down because I'm assuming that if you have this, down means it's going down towards you. The arrow up means it's going that direction away from you. That's how I made it for both those arrows. So this is how you would read if you just want the chart and you don't want to look at the written instructions. Foundation rows 0 and 1 is the square thingy and the circle. This F is going to tell you, I mean, you can look at this F too, they should be the same, if it's going to be on the front. And this arrow here is going to tell you, bring that loop, the accent loop has to be towards you. Pointing, arrow is pointing towards me, so I'm bringing it to the front. So now that we've gotten that far, let's move on. Our written instructions say that we are now at row 2. Let me double check that I'm in the frame. Yes. We're now at row 2. Now, if you're reading the chart here, round 2, we always start at this side. So it starts with this blue arrow away from us. And it tells you here that the blue arrow means what are you going to do with your main color? So you got to kind of keep, they're floating together. They're not really locked together. They're just sort of floating. And we're about to use our accent color. We're on row 2. What do we do with this main color tail? Well, he needs to get put away from us. When we do our first stitch, we don't want to lock him in on the wrong side because then we'll have to undo the whole project. This column here is telling you that your chain 3 needs to be in front. That's already been done. So we read every other square. The next square says F, and that corresponds here, F1. So we're gonna yarn over, and our next stitch, if you're familiar with interlocking, you're used to skipping this pole and going into the next gap. And it's a front stitch, which means I'm grabbing my accent color and I'm pulling it to the front. I am not using that main color. The main color is not being worked into. It's just hanging out. And a double crochet and a chain 1 finishes that stitch. Then we have C, because we only read every other box. C, a corner, means chain 2. If you chain really tightly, you can chain 3. I just do 2. And now we turn it because we're working on the next side. So it's hard to keep that box square, but that's what we're doing once we've got to the corner. In order to do our first stitch, we're going to go over here. There's no, it says in the key as well, when there's absolutely nothing on it, it means N, null, no symbol. That square doesn't get read, there's no symbol there. So the next stitch here is F. And we can count ahead if we wanted to. We can say, oh, there's 2 Fs and then a corner stitch. And where are our 2 stitches going? Well, we've turned it. The 2 stitches are going here and here. So we are working into this circle, and our stitch has to go in the same place that we put that one. Because it's a corner, they kind of get right on top of each other. Chain 1 always to finish your stitch. Then, of course, you go into the next window gap, making sure you're going around only the accent color, and chain 1. Then we have another C for corner, so I'm going to chain 2 again, and I turn my work. Now, because this is not the finishing side, I'm just repeating it here again. The asterisk here is tell you asterisk C, F2, C, F2, C, F2. You do it for all the sides. So we did our corner, we turned it. Now the first stitch has to go in that same spot. Those corners, the points of them touch each other. Chain 1. The next stitch goes here. Make sure, we've got some funny tails out there, but that's okay. So we're going to grab that accent color, bring it to the front because we're doing front stitches. Double crochet, chain 1. Then we've reached a corner, so we chain 2 and we turn it. This is not our final row, or sorry, final side. So we got 2 more front stitches, just like we did. We're going to repeat it for every side. Front 1, chain. And make sure you are getting that inner circle, because front 1, chain. This tail doesn't need to be there. Let's get that out of the way. So this is the final corner. Corner means, and we've reached the end, so it's time to join it to our first double crochet. And then you can kind of see that where your corners are right there. I just wanted to point out that a common mistake for this final corner, for some reason, I don't know why I kept doing it, I've done it a few times, is I would be grabbing this is the double crochet, it's actually the chain 3, instead of the circle that we originally made. And then everything gets wonky. So make sure you're going to pick the circle. And also, when we do our slip stitches, you can either go in the window, that's what I prefer because it's easier, or you can count the stitches. And you can go into the second stitch for your slip stitch join. It does keep things from sliding around. because now you're right in the stitch, but it's extra work that I don't really like, so I don't do it. And I chain 3. You don't see that here. It says slip stitch, that's the end of the row. I always chain 3 to prepare for my next row because it's easier to keep track of this working yarn and tail when it's long like this. And now we are back to our main color. If you were to lay this down, you can see that these working yarns, they're always beside each other. Accent color, main color, every time. And we are on row 3. You could get a ruler or mark it off however you like. There's a couple apps that'll do it. Row 3 here, we know that odd numbered rows. Oh, I can see, I have to fix that. It adjusted, this photo is now too low and it broke that up. All even numbered rows use accent color. Odd numbered rows use main color. So it's there. It's in here as well, but it's up here. So then it looks like this on the back. It's some circles and you got these tails. About this round is when I would weave in this black tail. One, because he's long and he gets in the way, but also to keep him from opening up. I feel like now I have enough stitches that I could weave him in. I'm not going to do it for the video. I'm going to be lazy. Same with this one. I would just weave it in now. We are going to move on to round 3. Sometimes I call them rows, but technically they're rounds. We're going around and around. The first thing that we look at, if we go to round 3, is it doesn't have any arrow here. It has no information. Why? Because you're already using your main color. This is just to tell you where your main color goes when you're doing an accent color row. The next square also has no information. So you have to keep going. It says B, and it's slightly different pink than this because this is your chain 3. We've already done it beforehand, and it says B. It's too late now. If you made a mistake the previous row, you'd have to undo it. It's already in the back. So it's just a double check. Chain 3 and back, yes, it is already in the back. Then it says front 1. So we yarn over, and our next stitch, we're used to doing it if you're interlocking. After this post, we go into the next hole, and it says front, so we're going to bring that yarn and that stitch, all of it to the front. Chain 1. Front 1. Then it says corner, so we add 2 chains. Chain, chain. And now we're over here. It says front, back, front, and then a corner. Not too many stitches to remember. And it says the same thing over here. The front stitch is going into that same corner gap. Make sure you chain 1 between all the double crochets. And then a back stitch means you have to move this accent color out of the way, go behind it, and do a double crochet as normal into the black. So all of my main color, my black yarn, all of those stitches are going into black. They never go into the accent color. They're just getting locked around it. The next gap, the next window gap, if you're following, if you're keeping things straight, is this one. I'm going to grab that loop and bring it to the front so that it is just woven around here, not actually in it. Chain 1 to finish the stitch, chain 2 because we're at that blue corner, and then we're going to do it again, front, back, front. So you grab the thing, bring it to the front. Make sure that when you're doing the front and the back stitches, besides always making sure that the accent color is out of the way, you want to make sure that you're double checking that before you do your yarn over. So we've got it here, we know we're bringing it to the front. Make sure it's all the way to the front before doing your yarn over. Otherwise you'll get the yarn on the wrong side. Chain 1 to finish that stitch, and then a corner. Woohoo! It goes fast at the beginning because it's such small rounds. If you got a blanket, it doesn't go as quickly around the edges. Back 1. Front 1. Chain. Now this is, our loop is all up here. This is where we started. That's the side that we have to finish here. It has nothing because you don't read that square. It has an F. So Oh, I guess I should finish my corner. I did chain 1, but I forgot to do chain 2 for the corners. My stitch over here says F. So yarn over, go into that spot like you have been doing for every corner. Chain 1 to finish the stitch. Then it says forward. The arrow is pointing towards me. I need to bring my accent color tail, the working yarn, the working loop, all of it forward toward me. That's the end of the row. So it says here slip stitch. It's at the end of every row. This one you just have to know you're at the end. Again, you can count chains or you can just go into that window, slip stitch, and I like to chain 3 to prepare for the next row. And that is the end of that. The back looks like this. I like the colors. I'm going to make that line again because otherwise I get confused. Too many papers going on here. I don't actually use the chart. I always just read off of here. Much easier for me. But I want you guys to be able to do both. So there we go. There you have it. We are now using our accent color because we're on an even number, row 4. It says main color to back. That's this first square here. It's kind of a greenish. Main color to back. This yarn, working tails and everything, just put it down towards the back. Then we know that the next one is F, and that's this chain 3. It is already in the front. It would be a mistake and you'd have to undo it if it was not in the front. Our next stitch is also in the front. So here's where you go into the double crochet like normal and chain 1. The next stitch here is in the back, and that is really this hole. That's the gap, and this is the color that's behind the gap, but the corners you can just move them out of the way to find your next one. Chain 1 to finish the stitch, and then chain 2, so it's always 3 chains in the corner. Then we turn it. We're working on this row now. Back, 2 front, 1 back again. So the first one has to go in this corner window, which is really the same place that you put this one. If you wanted to be really particular, you could put it in one of those stitches, maybe the second one, right? Because that'd be right in the middle. Way too complicated for me to be counting all the time. I like it because it goes fast. Front stitch goes in the front, but make sure you're bringing it all to the front before you grab the yarn. And front again. I think you're getting the hang of this now, so I'm going to move a little bit faster. You can always slow the video down if you need to. 1, 2, back, 2 front. And if you feel like the image, this image here, is too confusing, you could do it on here, right? So you would have to tell yourself, well, this was row 1, this is 1, 2, or sorry, this was row 0 because it's the inner dot. 1, 2, this would be row 3, right? You could do it that direction. I find it much more confusing to pay attention to this, but then you would be able to have different quadrants. You would follow the chart. You can always refer back to it if you're trying to make sure your picture looks the same. Chain 1 between each of the stitches. Oops. Then a back stitch behind there. 1, 2, back stitch again. That front one, chain, front. The other great thing about doing a center out project is that the squares will turn out square. So some people have a problem when they're doing a normal square back and forth, that it'll start to get taller instead of wider, and it's actually a rectangle. This keeps your stitches always, because you're working all 4 sides, it keeps it more square. So that's kind of fun. So Got that back stitch, corner, back stitch, slip stitch. The main color isn't in the way. These ones, they tend to lean because they've been pulled, but if you straighten them out, that main color has actually already been dealt with. So the straight is up here. That means that make sure your final double crochet, finish your chain 1 to actually finish the stitch, and then slip stitch it into the second chain or into the gap. And of course we don't turn our work, but in that tutorial I've shown you both sides because it helps you to see if you've made a mistake. Now we are going to grab our main color again. We can scratch this line out. So we're on row 5. We can read it here. Chain 3 is already in the back. We ever decided that at the beginning of this accent color row. It's already been decided. So it's a double check for you to have to frog it if it's in the wrong place. Then it says front 2. So our first stitch is here. Front 1, chain. The next stitch is this corner one, and it's in the front. So we don't have to worry about getting that accent color in the way. Chain. The corner is chain 2, and then the next stitch, when we turn it, has to go in that same space. That helps us get our corners. Chain. Then it says front 2. So one stitch is in the corner. You have to remember that he is in that corner so that you know that the next stitch is here. It can help if you find you're getting confused on the corners. That chain 2 space takes longer, but it can help you remember that this stitch was not over here because they slide around and they look like they're too close. So that's the corner, front 2. The next one goes behind. And then we have 2 more in the front. One, 2. Make sure it's in that corner gap. You make sure it's not in this gap, right? You have to always be aware of where you're going. Chain 1 space. Next stitch goes here. Make sure it stays on the front. Then 1 stitch in the back. And a stitch on the front. Next stitch is on the front. It's in that corner. You have to kind of pretend like your corner is a corner because nothing is pulling on it yet. Chain 1, then add 2 more, then go into that same corner for 1, 2, chain 1, back stitch. Make sure your accent color is all getting out of the way. You only want to be using black into black and purpley, greeny, bluey, whatever that is, into purpley, greeny, bluey. Front 1. Oops, I missed. I just only grabbed 1 loop. I want to actually grab both loops to keep them nice and tight and strong and secure. So make sure you're going into that corner. Chain 1, then 2 for the corners. This one is going to go in the corner again. The next stitch is this one here. Chain 1 to make sure you finish your stitch. And now it's telling you red is referring to your accent color. What are you going to do with these tails? Bring them towards you. Arrow to me, bring that whole yarn. Make sure you don't lose your loop if you're not using a stitch marker. Bring it to me, then slip stitch closed to that first black one. 1, 2, 3. We're ready for the next one. There you go, it's doing good. Row 6, round, sorry. main color to back. So I'm gonna put my finger there and just keep it out of the way. You can also, I should cross it out or I'll forget on here. It's telling you here, put that color away from you. The front means that our chain 3 has to be in front, but it was already decided. So you'd have to frog only a little bit this time if you made a mistake. Our next stitch is a front, then a back, and then a front. Chain 2 for the corner. This side here, we've got front, back, 2 front, back, front. So these are mirrored to each other. It's not always going to be the case, but it is in this one. I prefer to read it on here, but we're looking at both, so just do it all together. Front, remember it has to be in that first corner space, so it's actually the same place that you put that other stitch. Back. Come on. Two front. Make sure that your corner goes in the front. Keep that black one away. Chain 2 for the corners. Spin it. Then you have to still go in that same spot for your corner. Front one. Back one. Front 2. Back one, front one, chain 2 for the corner. Front one is going in that first corner, of course, you know this. I think you know this. Back one, and I think this is my favorite round because now you can see that the hearts are showing up. And I think hearts are cute. I use them in a lot of my designs, which you might already have noticed. I have little kids, so I guess I like cutesy things, and I guess I'm just a child in a grown-up's body. I don't know. I like cutesy things. I like this pinky, purpley, rainbowy yarn. It's pretty. Final stitch, of course. You gotta find your corner. Chain 1 to finish it, chain 2 for the corners. Make sure you're using the right spot. Oops, we don't want that black one, get out of there. Chain 1, it says front, back, and then nothing. So we've got our front, our back, and then our nothing. Oh, make sure you finish the chain space. Then our nothing, because this is leaning, but it really belongs here, like so. So it's just time to join them. Row 7, odd colors or odd numbers means main color. There's nothing here because you're already using the main color. The first letter is B. That's your chain 3. It's already in the back. Chain 3 in back. Then we have 2 more in the back, 1 front. So make sure that you know this is the window that is being used. Then this is the next window. Make sure you're grabbing it, bring it to the back. The next window is here. Grab it, bring it to the back. This is the next window here. You have to grab it the whole corner and bring it to the front. Oops. And we get a chain 2 for the corners. And of course we know up front, and then all of them in the back. So you can count them if you like, or you can use those cues to know. So we got front 1, and then the back. Sometimes I grab too many loops, like this is the 2 loops you should be grabbing. There's like 3rd loops and stuff down there. You can grab them, it doesn't matter. And the last one, the corner one, is a front. Chain 2 for the corners. Then we got front again. One, 2, you notice also double crochets are going into double crochets. Those chain spaces are just in between each stitch. So that's something that you're more familiar with if you've done regular back and forth interlocking crochet first. That is why I suggest to start there. Then we chain 1 to finish our stitch and chain 2 more for the corner. Front 1, back 2, 5. So the other thing that is good about center out technique is that you can stop at pretty much any round and you'll have something square, and you'll have something that has a finished looking border around it. If you know, like, I'll show you what I mean in a second. Chain 2. All right, so the final in front, then there's only 2 backs before we have to deal with something. So here's our first back stitch there. The next back stitch is here. Chain 1 to finish the stitch. Then where does it say? It says the arrow is pointing up. Put this away from me. I just sort of hold it down there for a second so that I can find my black from before and just slip stitch it together. So you could end the round. You could end your whole project right now. You've got black all the way around. You can see little hearts. It's cute. Go ahead, cut it off if you're done. If you want to keep going, we're just going to add a little bit extra. Mostly because then if we finish the chart, this square is going to be the same size as my other tutorial squares because they're all a chart size of 21 by 21. So like the wave and some little hearts I have. That is why I made it continue. And I just put this little like dot in the corner. That's all. It's not super exciting, but it looks like this when it's done. It's cute. So you could stop it now. We're going to go a little bit farther. Row 8, round 8, main color to the back. That's the black one. We're going to put it out of the way for now so that we can do our accent color row. Chain 3 in back is reminding you that double check. It's already in the back, it's stuck, can't change it unless we frog. The next stitch goes into, make sure you're not getting into this loop. Goes into here, bring it to the back, yarn over and finish your stitch. And it says 3 of them, so B3 means do 3 stitches in the back. Then front 1, that's that corner one. 2 for the corners. Front 1. That's this here. one front, all the rest in the back, one front. The chart can help you visualize it. The words say the same thing. I am going to make a million of these little squares and see if I can come up with some cool things. I really like this color, but I'm pretty sure it's discontinued. It was given to me. My mother-in-law gave it to me, and I'm not sure if it was in her stash or if one of her friends was clearing out her stash and just said, hey, I don't know what to do with this. And everyone knows I'm the crochet girl, so I get some fun leftovers. Leftovers sounds bad, but I like them. I like the leftovers. Except for in this case, this skein is just one, and I have no idea how to get more, and I really like it, so I'll probably never see it again. It's probably discontinued, and if I wanted to search it out, I could spend $1 million, but I'm not going to. So I'm gonna see how much I can do with one skein and make a bunch of these squares, and then I'll join them together and make something else. So if you're counting, you can. If you just want to follow along, we're just going to keep going round and round, getting every stitch. I'm trying to move a little faster because I think you get the point, and I want to, one, finish the square and also get to that final border round. So you can tell that as the rounds get larger, it takes longer to complete each round. That is the fun part of making squares. You get that instant gratification. You just finish them and then you check, check, check. I did so many cool things today. It took me forever to make these tutorials. It felt like forever. I hope that you guys are gonna love them and say I'm super duper cool and you're amazing, Ashley. You can go ahead and just tell me. It's all right. Go ahead. Tell me I am super cool. So I think this is our, yep, this is our side where now we have to gonna pay attention. There's only space for 2 more back stitches and then you have to join them, right? Make sure you finish that before you join. That was a mistake that I made a few times when I was figuring out how to do this. Now, you can see I just chained 3 because that's what I'm used to doing. But actually, that's the end of the accent colors. I don't need that chain 3. I am going to do 1 chain, which is really turning into a knot. I'm just going to pull it through, pull it tight, because I'm not going to use that color again. So we're going to scratch that out, and you can tell that we're not going to use that again because up here there's no information. This final row, row 9, is actually here. So the chart, because of the way the charts are designed, this is always, when you're reading the charts, when I have my chart tutorial, you're actually reading 1 row down, because what we need to know for each row is whether we're covering or showing the previous. So this actually, this top black or green, it doesn't actually get used on the chart, because once you do this row, row 9, once you figure out, well, am I covering this or hiding it, covering it or hiding it, the top part is just already made. It's already done. So that's why you don't need it, but it is part of the image. Now on here, you can see they just all say B for back. And you could do back stitches all the way around. That is what I did on this one. They're all just back stitches. And because it's not too flappy, except for the corners. The corners are very flappy. And I was like, well, this is probably not the first pattern where we're going to have some flaps. Could be even in the middle section, right? So what I've done on here, and the way I've described it in the tutorial and what I'm going to show you now, is that I'm actually going to use this final row as a border, the final border. And they're going to be half double crochets. The chain 3, we'll leave it because it gets us up high to where we want to be. Our first half double crochet is going to be going into this. So normally interlocking crochet, a black would never go into the accent color, but we're going to do it for the final border. Half double crochet, yarn over. We're going to use this stitch. These would be the 2 loops that you would normally go under, but we're just going to use the back loop. And we're going to half double crochet our final border round. The next stitch, yarn over because it's a half double crochet. This is the next one here. We're going to use the back loop, but we're going to take a look at the back and see if there is a black stitch available to lock in, and there is. There wasn't here because the post is in the way, but here there's black available. So you can grab the back loop only or the 3rd loop, whatever you prefer. I specifically in my patterns do say back loop only, but if you change it, it's not going to matter to me. Then we're going to yarn over, and this feels wrong for interlocking because we've got 2 colors here, but we're going to do it. We're going to yarn over, we're going to pull it through the black one and the accent color, then finish the half double crochet. So what that has done is right here, you can pull these little gaps and make them bigger. Once it's locked in, it's locked in really for the final 3 rounds. So it makes the final round look nice because it's a little thicker than just a single crochet, and it's locking everything in. If it is too complicated, you can do double crochets like normal. You could just lock in the corners if you would prefer. After we're all done this, you could take a needle and thread and you could go around and lock them in, or just the corners, whatever you want to do. It's your project. This is my suggestion, okay? And I want to show you how I do the corners because it's part of my suggestion. So we go through the back loop. We can't grab anything here, so that's okay. We'll just do a regular half double crochet in the back loop. Anytime there's a chain space, we know that we can reach down and grab that back black loop as well. Then we pull it through both the black loop and the accent color, and then half double crochet goes through all 3. So when we get to the corners, that is the trickier part. I know some of you are like, that's the trickier part, it's already tricky. So we're just grabbing the loop, pulling it through for half double crochet. This one, because there is black behind there, I'm going to grab it as well. So chain spaces, you'll have a loop to grab, and some of the double crochets will be front or back, so you'll be able to grab a loop sometimes. Now we've got to the corner. We've got 3 chains. 1, 2, 3 chains in the corner. But if you go to the previous row, you've already used 1 chain for this post here, and this post has 1 chain as well. So there's actually only 1 chain available. All of these 1, 2, 3, all of them will go down here into the same chain. You can take the whole loop if you like. 1 chain is sufficient. So we're going to go into the first chain space and then down there into that next chain available for the black one. And then this is our very cornerist, most corner chain. I don't think that's a word. And it actually uses the same black loop. And that finishes the side. So to get our corner, if you hear the instructions, it says half double crochet, chain 2, half double crochet. So we did our half double crochet, chain 2, and now our half double crochet is going in the same corner space for the accent color and that same corner space for the black loop. So that was our half double crochet, chain 2, half double crochet. Then this accent color chains, there's still 1 more chain here, and it actually technically uses the same, oops, I forgot to yarn over. It uses the same loop, and if you don't like using that loop 100 times, you could just find a different loop back here. No one is going to know, it's your project, but it technically does use that same loop. And then half double crochet. That gets us to our next accent color double crochet, back loop only, the black one is available back here. So if you can find it, the right chain, you can just grab it, lock it in. Oh, I forgot to yarn over again. Whoops, sorry guys. And then our next chain space will have a locked in with the black as well. So it's a lot of locking in. You don't have to do it that way. I just think it worked really nice. Then our next double crochet, of course, you can't, there's nothing to lock in. So we just keep going. So that is how I do that. And you would go all the way around until you get your finished square, just like this. And then you can join them together, make pretty things. That is how to read the chart, how to read the written, how to do the technique, all in one. I hope it's helpful. I know the video is very long. I appreciate everybody who watches and learns so that then you can go do bigger projects and amazing things. So, thanks for watching.